Hello everyone, Mr. Green Pump, your greenhouse infrastructure guru, instructing you today. While doing research for my last video about pressure gauges, it became apparent that there is very little known about the fluid used in gauges and how to fill them up if you want to do so. So in this video, number 18, I will discuss some of the most common fluids used in gauges, how to purchase fluid, and how to fill your gauge. I, for one, don't like to see a gauge that is only partway filled up. Manufacturers' guidelines state that up to 15% of the volume of a gauge can be left unfilled. I have run across new gauges that look like 1/4 is unfilled. My own opinion is that no more than 1 to 3% of volume should be left unfilled. I have never seen any damage caused by a filled up gauge. As I said, it is hard to get information about gauge fluids, but I managed to capture a page from a manual on the internet, which lists the most common gauge fluids and their operating temperature ranges. So let's begin. The most common fluid is glycerine, which is made from plant material. Food grade 99.5% to 100% glycerine is suitable for gauge use. What you may not know is 99.5% to 100% pure glycerine by itself has a temperature range of only plus 30 degrees to 300 degrees Fahrenheit. If you're going to drain and refill your gauge and you live in an area that gets freezing temperatures, you need to mix some distilled water with your glycerine to increase the low temperature operating range. This display shows the percentage ratios of glycerine in water and what is expected to be the lowest operating temperature without affecting gauge accuracy. You will notice that adding more than 30% water will raise the low operating temperature. 30% water will get you down to minus 38 degrees Fahrenheit, and 20% water down to minus 4.5 degrees Fahrenheit. If, however, you're only going to top off your gauge, it will probably be okay to add unmixed glycerine. The second most common gauge fluid, which I consider to be the Cadillac of gauge fluids and is one of those gee whiz products, is made from sand and quartz. That would be silicon fluid or dimethicone 1000 CST. Here is a couple of more names it is known by. Dimethicone 1000 CST is inert and will not react chemically with anything, is non-flammable, and has an operating temperature range of minus 50 degrees Fahrenheit to 450 degrees Fahrenheit. Dimethicone is in just about everything: cosmetics, skincare products, contact lenses, shampoos, food, caulking, lubricants, and heat-resistant tiles, to name a few. Yes, ma'am. Do you have a question? Go ahead. Okay. What does the 1000 CST mean, and what does CST stand for? Well, that's easy. CST stands for Central Standard Time. No, I'm only kidding. CST actually stands for centistroke. What is a centistroke, you ask? Well, I don't want to get too far off into the weeds because most people don't have a weed whacker, much less a weed mower. A centistroke is a measure of viscosity or thickness, much like motor oil that has certain viscosities. 1000 CST happens to be the correct viscosity for gauges. I want to mention two more lesser used gauge fluids. They would be mineral oil, which has a temperature range for gauges of -30 to plus 200 degrees Fahrenheit, and propylene glycol, which has a gauge range of -50 to 200 degrees Fahrenheit. Propylene glycol is not an antifreeze and is of a pharmaceutical grade. All of these four fluids can be obtained from eBay at low cost. Compare similar items and order the lowest cost one. Now, let's move on to how to fill up gauges. If your gauge is mounted, you do not need to remove it. Using something that is not very sharp, pry the plug out of the fill hole. Be careful that you don't damage or lose the plug, as you will be needing to reinstall it after filling. If you do damage or lose the plug, never fear. Mr. Green Pump has a low-cost fix for this problem also, and we'll tell you about it at the close. Once you remove the plug, you will see that the fill hole could be anywhere from 1/8 inch to 1/2 inch in diameter. So how are we going to fill up our gauges without making a big mess? How about using an inkjet filling syringe? They usually come with a blunt metal needle and can hold 10 milliliters, which is 0.34 US fluid ounces or 0.35 UK fluid ounces, or a little over 1/3 fluid ounce. You can buy these syringes on eBay cheaply. Just search for inkjet syringes. I happen to have a couple of these syringes left over from the days when I refilled ink cartridges. So, suck up the gauge fluid in the syringe, move over to the gauge and fill it slowly. the reason why you want to fill the gauge slowly is because the fluid is thick and takes a little time to settle evenly. Now watch as I fill up these 3 gauges. I have added a short piece of tubing instead of the needle to make it go faster. Once you have your gauge filled up, wipe off the top and install your fill plugs. If you previously lost or damaged your plug beyond reuse, wipe off the top of the gauge with a paper towel. Next, take a paper towel with some rubbing alcohol and clean the top of the gauge. Now, take a 2-inch piece of electrical tape and place it centered over the hole. On top of that, a 1-inch piece of electrical tape. Do not stretch the tape when applying. Voila, good as new. Well, that concludes my class on filling gauges. I will be taking your after-class questions and comments below. Please like, subscribe, share, and hit that thumbs up button to help ward off those YouTube opiate people hiding behind the curtain from discriminating and picking winners and losers. And now, in closing, I have for you the quotation of the video. It is from Simone Weil. All sins are attempts to fill voids. Thank you, and have a above average day.